Over to the audience because I heard you all gasping and applauding and laughing in all the right parts, so I know there were questions brewing out there. But first, I have several questions. I wanted to talk about, the love triangle that forms the center of this film is fascinating in its volatility and like the concessions that certain members of it are willing to make to the outsized personality at the center of it. I'm just wondering if you can give us a little background on the inspiration behind the shape that this love triangle took.
Sure. It's always hard to sort of pinpoint a moment. I will say that during the pandemic and the lockdown, I, like many people, hungered for intimacy. And I also wondered whether a certain kind of film that I grew up loving would still be possible afterwards. And for me, that was a film about intimacy and sex and life somewhat sort of like I knew it, instead of something more global, something more less personal. And I felt like I wanted to make the most personal film and the most personal kind of filmmaking that I could. And I also wanted to make a film that was filled with pleasure. And for me, a love triangle was a place that I could see the things that I am attracted to in cinema, which are really suspense. Like, I watched a lot of Hitchcock during the pandemic. And with a love triangle, you always sense that there's someone out of reach. And so there's always this question of who wants what, when. Specifically, I saw a movie called The Innocent, the last film of the Italian director Visconti. And I was watching the film as a gay man, and there was Laura Antonelli, this beautiful woman who I was really turned on by. And I thought, what happens if I leave the theater and my life changes? So the question of change became very interesting to me and was a bridge to this film.
And in terms of the characterization, I feel like we need to start with Tomas. It's interesting to me because I feel like a lot of the reaction you might have to this character feels like he would normally be like the villain character, the antagonist in a story, rather than the person that we most follow in the story. And is there an extent to which you find him sympathetic at all in the actions that he does?
I love him. I loved him when I love Franz Rogowski. I saw him in a film called Happy End by Michael Haneke. And if you haven't seen the movie, I recommend it. But even if you just want to see the clip that I saw, you can go to YouTube and look up Franz Rogowski, Sia Chandelier. And you can see him sing a karaoke performance of Sia Chandelier, and it's extraordinary. And I saw that and I was like, I was really turned on. I was very excited. And I thought maybe I could collaborate with him. And so we wrote the movie for Franz, and I really felt a love for him on the screen. And then as soon as I met him and got to know him and work with him, there was a lot of joy on the set of this film, which is about a lot of pain. But I think from the start, I was always kind of excited by his presence, and I felt that the audience would go with me. We watched a lot of James Cagney movies together because there was an idea that cinema has been filled with people who you might not consider heroes, but they are the people you want to watch. And for me, I had no question that people would want to watch this guy, or at least I did. So.
Absolutely. I would also recommend Christian Petzold's Transit and a movie he did long ago called Love Stakes. Franz has been in a lot of great, and I mean, this film has some towering figures in European acting. Adele, of course, came to prominence in Blue is the Warmest Color, and Ben's been kind of, towing the line between major, studio pictures and more artistic fare. What qualities did those two bring that you felt would play off of the character that Franz was playing?
Well, I've seen them both. Ben I really knew most, to be honest, from I'm Not There, the Todd Haynes film, where he plays one of many Bob Dylans, and I just always remembered this very easy, very compelling performance. Adele, I haven't seen Blue is the Warmest Color, which is I still have not seen Blue.
She also is in a very wonderful film put out by Movie called The Love Devils, or The Five Devils, that just came out.
She was in a movie called Sybil, a French film that came out a few years ago, and I saw it and I was like, who is that? And I was just really drawn to her. And they're all of a style that I think works well together in the sense that they're naturalistic actors who also have the presence of movie stars. And that was something that was very significant in the making of the film, because at a certain point, we realized and we embraced that we were making a movie. So, for example, with Adele's wardrobe, and Franz and Benz's wardrobe as well, but specifically with Adele, there was like 2 racks that we had to choose from. One was kind of an elementary school in Paris every day, kind of you might see on the subway, and then the other was the Brigitte Bardot rack. And we chose the Bardot rack, like she's dressed like a star. And I think that was something that we gave into, so you're watching a realistic movie that's also very, very unreal at the same time.
I mean, you brought up fashion, so we have to talk about the fashions. Mostly Franz's, but like across the board. So can you talk about the inspiration?
I worked with an extraordinary, wonderful person, and costume designer, Hadija Zagai, and she just has a great eye. And I think there was, I don't rehearse with my actors before I start shooting the film. We spend time together individually, and then we spend a lot of time together picking out clothes. And I find that that's a way that I can get to know them and they can get to know me, and there's a lot of playful, and then suddenly you're with these people who can actually put those clothes on and look good, which is not a given. They're not that easy to pull those clothes off, but it was really something that as soon as the wardrobes would be put on these actors, you felt like that's just what they wear, and somehow you buy it. So, I think that was part of the pleasure principle of the film, which is to expose skin and use color and to heighten everything in a certain way that gives the film a kind of, hopefully it kind of plays in your memory. That you might have experienced the story, but what you'll remember are the images.
I don't want to hog all the questions, so we'll see if the audience wants to go where I want to go with the questions. If there's any out there, please raise the hands. Yes, go ahead.
With the actors on the script, I mean, word for word, improv, what's the freedom on the script?
Just so everybody heard it, the question is, was there any improv, or was were the actors word for word from the script?
This is the fifth film that I've written with Mauricio Zacharias, my co-writer, and I would give him credit for what he tends to write the first draft of the film, and I would say of the script that we finished, I would say 90% is in the film. So it's quite scripted. John Lithgow said about working on Love is Strange, which is a film we made together, he said that I wanted him to do something that was very challenging, which was to do it as if he'd never done it before, don't rehearse and get all the lines right. And I hope I'm not like Franz at the beginning of it. I'm really not. I'm the opposite. But that being said, I would say if 90% scripted, then 10% is improvised. And the 10% that improvised kind of inflects the rest of the film. So you have the scene, for example, the lunch scene with the parents. Until Franz stands up, that's a scripted scene. But then the camera keeps rolling, and then you have these 4 incredibly good actors who were able to just raise it even a notch with the level of their performance, their commitment, their creativity, which is really on hand there. So there's that improvised, and also because it's not pre-rehearsed, the shooting becomes a process of emotional improvisation, because they don't know what the other people are going to say in terms of how it's going to feel to receive that information. So everything is very new in the moment.
Ooh, there's a lot. I'm going to go here first. Yes, you. Behind you, not the... Yes. Then we'll go to you.
Was the ending that we saw the first ending that was written, or were there other endings in between when, and if so, why did you go with this?
The question is, was the ending that we saw the first ending written, or were there others that were toyed with, and why did you go with this one?
One of the things I do, Mauricio writes the first draft, and I consider the last draft mine, and part of what I'm doing is adapting to what I'm seeing. I always keep in mind this quote by the French director Jean Renoir, which is, when you're making a film, keep the windows open and let the world in. So part of my job is to observe what's happening around me. And one of the things I observed was that Franz Rogowski is just like a kamikaze bike rider, like an insane bike rider, for better or worse. And every time we would meet, he would be like, there he would be on it. And so I incorporated his love of biking in Paris. It seemed to me something that would give the film, it just seemed very personal to him. It also opens the movie up to Paris. Finally, you see the city. And this story that we've really been inside rooms and apartments and in this small world suddenly becomes connected to a larger world, which is really important to me. The initial ending was like, he was going to the airport. I've never answered this question, but today I will. Nobody's ever asked either, but he's going to the airport. He's on his way to Venice, to the film festival. He's going to the airport, and his car runs out of gas. And he ends up at a gas station, and he's like stuck. And that was an ending that I didn't use. So.
Okay, and then we can go to you right here.
Ira, I'm curious if you talk about tension and thriller. Is kind of like an entry point into this film for you. And in each of the characters, the tension comes from the kind of competing desires and goals. I'm wondering, obviously it was on the page, but I was curious if there was something that you told them, the actors, or what you could share, how they kind of like their desires butted up against each other, and what you're trying to achieve, what they wanted.
I kind of actively don't do that. Like, I think of acting as
What was the question?
Oh, sorry.
Was there direction given to the actors to create the tension between them? That was specific.
And yeah, what did I say to the actors to kind of give them direction around motivation, perhaps, and need? You know, I really think of acting as action. So my job is to give them the actions, to block them, to give them other actors in the room that make sense to the story, to build their characters through costume and through kind of set decoration. There's worlds that are very lived in when they arrive, but I really try not to discuss things like subtext or motivation with the actors, because then they start to play what's being discussed. And I'd rather discover in the process a little bit more like psychoanalysis, in the sense that everything is, there's enough space for silence and discovery, and you don't know what direction you're going, and it's a little bit scary, but I think for the actors also a little bit fun, kind of like therapy, because it isn't preset, and there's not something that they're trying to achieve that we've discussed beforehand. And yeah.
You're gonna go further in the back there. Yep. Yep. You.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for not letting LGBT characters be these one-sided, tragic characters, so they can be assholes and narcissists, actually. And the other part is, as actors, did you direct the character? Did you direct Thomas or Franz to be aware that he's a narcissist? And the other actors to be aware that you're dealing with a narcissist? And were they aware that they were dealing with a narcissist?
I think it seems we all heard the question, but part one was thank you for queer assholes, and part two is was everyone directed to be aware that Franz's character was a narcissist?
We really all loved Franz. I mean, we love Thomas. I mean, Thomas, you know, I don't really think he's a narcissist, to be honest. He might be a no. He might be a sociopath. But to me, in every scene, if you look at the images on the screen and you look at how they're relating to each other, Tomas is always interested in what the other person feels and wants. I mean, he's really, except for one or two scenes, but in general, he's like really trying to like seduce. And that seduction is partially that he's paying attention to people. And as an actor, he's also really paying attention. He's really present. So I think that there was a sense, I mean, you know, this is a movie where the two men, the relationship begins at a place in which things are already pretty bad. So I can't say that Martin was like he's almost over it, but he's not quite.
Yeah.
Right? And then I think someone like that character for a god is really like offers so much. I don't know. Reminds me of people I know.
A lot of people I know.
Yeah. Me too. Some are in my family.
I think we have time for a few more. Yeah, right here. Yes. I think I have two people pointed this Elizabeth. The one further back. Yes. You go. Yes, you. Sorry. They're both right in line with each other. Go ahead.
Well, I recently read an article published by the Daily Times about the film was going to be slapped with a NC-17 rating, but you ultimately decided to go with a unrated. And I want to ask what like the process of that was like for you, in terms of like how the film's going to be distributed and how it's going to get an audience.
So the question's regarding yesterday's LA Times article about the MPAA putting an NC-17 rating on the film, and movie is going to release it unrated, and what that process was like for you deciding on that.
Well, I'll first say, Mubi, there was never a moment there was never even a mention of the possibility of changing the film. It's so essential that this film, to me, if it's a film of pleasure, I hope it's also a film of liberty. And I feel like my intention was to be as free as possible, and I had to go, in order to get to understand what is possible, I had to go back to movies from the 70s and earlier than now. Like, we don't all go in one direction, this idea of progress, and particularly when it comes to cinema around so many other things, it also goes backwards. So if you look at movies I was looking at movies like Taxi Zum Klo, made in 1981 in Berlin. I was looking at Chantal Ackerman's Je tu il elle. I was looking at Pasolini films. So in general, you need to be reminded, you can shoot that image. And also, this isn't that. I mean, I have to say, and then the MPAA is just ridiculous. So
It almost seems quaint at this point, right? Like, really? Are we still doing that?
Someone I work with, Stephen Kuster, pointed out to me today the history of the Hays Code. Like, the Hays Code I like the pre-code movies, and this is, I hope, a pre-code movie. And the Hays Code was really developed by the Catholic Church. And so the history of the Hays Code becoming the MPAA code is just a history of cultural repression. I mean, we know that. So, I hope it gets some people into the audience. That's all. It looks like it's going to be a sexy film. People are going to go.
We have time for one more. So who's got the best? I think because we were so awkward before.
My question was also about the NC-17 rating, but a little bit more of a big picture kind of thing. You're also quoted in the article as saying that it's a particularly dangerous time, of course, with the creeping fascism of everything. Do you think that, as an artist who has a investment in, representing gender variance, sexual variance, do you think that the visual artist has a political responsibility at this time?
So the question is, does the artist have a political responsibility in representing gender variance, sexuality variance?
I think I don't look at my work as a responsibility. I think I look at it as an expression. And so the challenge is to continue to express myself as transparently and openly and freely as possible, which a lot of things are coming at you, including the MPAA. They're basically telling you, don't create those images. But before the MPAA, there's the industry. Look at the number of gay and lesbian filmmakers who've had sustained careers telling stories about our lives. Very, very few in this industry and in this city. So you're always fighting things, and I think how you fight that is complex, and who gets to tell the stories. And this is also a film about a white man in power. Like, that's what you're seeing here. I'm here. And so I think in some ways this film questions all the different things that go into play in a situation like, that sentence just got lost right in the middle. I lost myself in that sentence. But I guess I think that as an artist, the challenge every day is to be yourself. And I feel like for me, I go back to like punk rock and New York in the 70s, and I think like people who were less expectant of this kind of career, giving them everything that they might want, and instead they said, this is what I have to say. And what I have to say is for me, just like what I see. There's no mission involved. It's really just what I see.
I want to thank you so much for sharing what you have to say with us and for joining us here. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. We're going to continue the conversation in the atrium. We have a quick turnover, so let's all go.